So for me, it was, the world was our house, obviously, which it is for every kid, and the few characters in it, which is your mother and the caretakers, etc., my brother. So that was my world, and that's mainly what I knew. So I had a lot of time with my mom, and I think, obviously, she was probably going through a lot of difficult times as well, and raising two children and having to take care of so many things by herself. So on a lot of subconscious level, a lot of things were absorbed, I think, by me, by my brother. And I do think that at that age, I was probably the extreme pleaser. That I would probably see my mom struggling in many different ways, emotionally mainly.
And just want to help.
And I was probably the emotional sponge. So, and kind of try and convert her negative emotions or sadness into some more positive ones. But she did do her best in so many ways. And I do remember having such a good time. We were like buddies. So I was literally her bestie. So, which, having a young bestie might not be the best thing, but I was her bestie. So we would watch series together. We would go out everywhere together. And she was in a foreign country as well, which is, when you come from an Arab world, you got all these brothers and father and all, then you go to a Western world, and she was hearing all sorts of stories in those places. So she was very protective and scared that anything would happen.
And at that time, okay, I'm sure knowing, okay, dad is about to leave for another 45 days or whatever it is, How was that for you?
So at that age, a kid doesn't know, is not really aware of my dad is about to go. You don't even understand what work is. You can tell a kid, daddy's going to work. It's like, what's that? I know home, I know nursery, I don't know what work. So you don't really have a concept of that. What you have a concept of is, as a kid, in your ego little system, you just want your parents to be there as much as possible. The only thing that kids want is time. That's pretty much all they want. So they can't really understand what's happening on the other side. And I think their way of dealing with that was the best they knew at the time, I suppose, was to, kind of just, he would go and come back, and we wouldn't really know when.
Okay.
And I do remember a lot of me going like, Daddy, don't go this time. Okay, you'll stay. And he's like, yeah, I'll stay. He's like, I'll stay. I'm like, I'm sure, I'll stay. And then the next day he's gone. I'm like, what happened? Where'd he go? So as a kid, obviously you don't understand. So you might go through, feeling betrayed or feeling abandoned or whatever. Obviously that's not what he's doing, and he was doing incredible magic for his family, which I'm so grateful for. But as a kid, you internalize it as daddy's going away, so next time he's here, and I don't know when that is, because I don't really have a notion of time the same way adults are, right, as kids. So the next time he comes, I'm gonna be like perfect girl, very good girl, so that he stays, like I'm gonna be perfect girl and good girl. And so that's when you start kind of adaptive ways of survival. And
it's interesting you say, as kids we think the world revolves around us.
Correct.
And the way that you were thinking about the situation was that when if I'm a good kid, he will stay.
But that's what kids do. So kids can only see the world through their ego, right? They're in ego fully, first perspective, up until they're 6 years old. So at that time, whatever happens is their fault. So if something good happens, it's thanks to them. If something bad happens, if mommy and daddy are fighting, it's my fault. If mommy and daddy are happy, it's thanks to me. So we internalize it that way. We don't have a concept of there's another person there, and there's their perspective and their emotional experience, etc., etc. Kid doesn't understand any of that. So it's just like everything's my fault or everything is thanks to me.
You hear, or I've heard people whose parents split up when they were kids, and they would say that they felt it was their fault. There seems to be a lot of
you
that. You
internalize it that way. I was reading something a month ago about victims of molestation. So kids who have been molested when they were young, etc. They also internalize it as their fault. See, an adult is able to say, yo, something happened to me and that was wrong. That's a sin, But a kid is like, that was my fault. I'm at wrong. And later on, when they unpack that, hopefully through therapy or whatever, they realize that they're carrying a lot of guilt. Guilt that is there's no guilt to be had.
So at what point did you move? At 6, you said you moved back to Abu Dhabi.
Yes, so at 6 we moved to Abu Dhabi, and it was such a clash. I went from 6 months of winters and Canada in a completely different world
to the heat, desert.